You know, a lot of people said, well, does he have a plan? Yeah, of course they do have a plan. The best plan ever. Iran has been defeated militarily, totally. They have a little left. They probably built up during this period of time. We'll knock that out in about a day. But I have a plan, you know, it's a very simple plan.
With the exception of the late, great Abraham Lincoln, I can be more presidential than any president that's ever held this office, that I can tell you. I've had a great, successful career.
Hey, welcome to this episode of The Soul Trap. As always, we are glad to have you with us, and we hope that wherever this episode and broadcast finds you, it finds you on that good and narrow way. There's always something going on. Sometimes it's sensational, sometimes it's spiritual, sometimes it's a little bit of both, and we're looking and researching and finding out if there are any dots, first of all, and then second of all, finding out if there are any connection to these dots. And today we're going to be doing that. We're going to be talking in just a moment with Jeffrey Grider from Now the End Begins. No stranger to this program. Of course, Kevin and I are going to be discussing and talking about things that are going on. And I thought we were kind of sitting here in the pre-production meeting thinking about what should we name this, what should we title it. And I think for both sides, I think we might just go with Orange Man Bad. I think that's a great title for the show. Orange Man Bad. You know, I was sitting in a production meeting the other day with our staff, and we were talking, and one of our younger men, Samuel, who's oftentimes either behind the camera or doing other work, he said, you know, he goes, one of the things that's interesting, and it was fascinating to me because he said it from a younger person's perspective. I think he's 22, 23. He said, you know, all the sides are radicalized now. And it kind of caught everybody's attention at the table. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, the left has been radical for a long time, but so is the right. The right is now radicalized as well. And within the right, you now have the radicalization of all parties involved. As I just said jokingly, you have Orange Man Bad. Everything he does is bad, radicalized. On the other side, you have Orange Man Good. Everything that he does is good, radicalized. On one hand, you have pro-Israel. On the other hand, you have anti-Israel. On one hand, you have let's bomb Iran into the Stone Age. On the other hand, you have let's do nothing around the world to secure our peace. In other words, there doesn't seem to be very much nuance anymore. There doesn't seem to be any areas to think through. And so that often can become a dangerous position, as we've talked about before. So we're going to be talking today, and we're going to be talking about literally the end times. And you think, well, you guys have been talking about that for a long time. That's true. But I truly believe, as we say, we are at the end of the end times, and everything seems to be lining up that way. So today is going to be simply a discussion. We don't have a set agenda. Sometimes we have a monologue. Sometimes we have some real high points we want to hit. I don't think that we want to do that so much today. In fact, we were just joking. I have my coffee. Kevin has his coffee. Brother Grider has his coffee. You are going to almost be able to sit in on a pre-production behind the cameras meeting as we talk, chat. In some instances, I may play devil's advocate. In some instances, I am the devil. In all instances, we are pursuing truth here at the Soul Trap. You know him. He sits behind the camera. You love him. He brings insanity to sanity. Brother Kevin, good to have you with us. We've been talking about a lot. And of course, it's also good to have Brother Grider with us. The other day, I was joking with Brother Jeffrey. I said, he sent me a text. He said, well, I'm just trying to stay above the fray. And I said, bro, you are the fray. Welcome to the show, my fellow frayer. We're glad to have you. How things going up there at Now the End Begins?
Oh, they're going great. They're going great. And it's funny, when we were having that text back and forth, you talk about the fray. You know, people sometimes forget that the Lord called our ministry 18 years ago, Now the End Begins. So you would expect to have a fair amount of fray and all those other things attached to it. And I was just listening to your introduction, and man, I just wanted to jump in on some of the stuff that you were just saying, just getting this ball rolling, because I agree with you. All right. And I don't want to get ahead of anything that you had planned to ask me or anything, or for us to talk about. But I agree that both sides are heavily radicalized, and we are living in a day and age where everything has become conspiracy and nothing is true anymore in the minds of the average person. Now, Hantavirus is a very bad, deadly thing, just like COVID was a very bad, deadly. We all know people who died from COVID. Now,
Oh yeah, yeah.
when you bring that up, at least 50 or 60% of the people that we talk with on a daily basis will say, well, that wasn't a real virus. It was engineered in the lab. And like, well, maybe it was, but people still died. So
Yes.
what's the difference with what type of virus, whether it's man-made or naturally occurring? But we are absolutely living in the end times, and the events of even just the last 6 months, I think, has sent everything into overdrive, and people are so touchy and they're so sensitive, and everybody is like locked on to their own position, and it's getting harder and harder to have a sane, logical, rational, biblical discussion about things.
Yeah. What do you think, Kevin? I mean, we've talked about that here recently. What do you think about that?
Like Brother Sam said, it has both sides are radicalized. It's almost now you're mixing two volatile chemicals together and you're just waiting for the explosion. They're pushing. It's like the same playbook from 2020. They just opened it back up and changed the names on the players. It's just happening again. All we need now is some sort of catalyst to start another one of those summers over again. I mean, you've pushed people to almost the limit now. You're taking middle-class Americans, stretching their budgets as thin as you can with gas prices and groceries.
And we don't care about the economy, but
Exactly.
I digress. Go ahead.
And then you look at it's just, and we're in this incredible drought right now. It's one of the worst we've seen in a long time. And you're putting people in corners.
Yeah.
I just saw this other day that Meta is building one of the biggest data centers in Georgia right now, and that puts such a strain on the infrastructure there that the surrounding communities have the lowest water pressure. The water just trickles out of their faucets there, and they can't even drink, can't even use their own water because of the sediment that's coming out of there. But that cost is being passed upon the people to put in to pay for that. So now you're pushing people to there has to be a breaking point. Something has to happen.
Yeah. All right. So, Brother Grider, let me set the tone. Let's talk about this, and let me give you a little bit of context.
Okay.
And then let's dive into this. I said this the other day, and I'm a big, my degree is in history, my pursuit is history. I think history is so important. I think outside of 9/11 and COVID, the biggest course change that happened in America happened, I want to say September 10th, whatever the exact date was, when Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And I say that because what was underneath the surface has now come to the surface. It was there already, but it was a huge course correction. And one of the things that exploded through Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and you can go on and on and on, was this, and it was there before, don't get me wrong, but was, I'm not gonna say anti-Semitism. I'm going to say an anti-Jewish agenda. And I think one of the things that people are having a hard time with is, and it's because they don't understand dispensational truth and they don't understand nuance. So it's, do I support carte blanche everything that the nation of Israel does at any time? Do I bow down and kiss the feet of Israel? No, I do not. But do I believe in Israel's right? Do I believe that they've been at war for 50 plus years? Do I believe in the promises of God? Am I a dispensationalist that says you better leave them alone? Genesis 17 is in effect. It has been. It will be. In other words, let's look at this in the light of what's going on. There's so much confusion out there, and I'm very, very concerned that even Christians are starting to land on the wrong side of this issue. And rather than saying, yes, I support Israel with caveat, they're just saying, no, I don't support Israel. I believe in the Ashkenazi, conspiracy. On and on and on it goes. So what are we getting right? What are we getting wrong from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, and Now the End Begins is uniquely identified with the nation of Israel and the Jewish people. If you go back and look at the very first graphic that we ever made for Now the End Begins, it doesn't have John 3:16 at the top. It has Joel 3:16. And I have the two witnesses. And if you go to our Facebook page right now, if you go to our X page and you look at the banner graphic, you'll see we made this illustration of the two witnesses blowing shofars. And so for nearly 18 years, Now the End Begins has been heavily and strongly identified with the nation of Israel. But to your point and to your question, where I think a lot of Christians, even Bible believers, are getting it wrong, is I don't support the nation of Israel, the secular nation of Israel 2026, Benjamin Netanyahu, so much as I support, from a biblical perspective, what God is going to do with the Jewish people. If you go to the book of Isaiah, chapter 28, and he talks about God bringing to pass his work, his strange work, and performing his act, his strange act. And then Isaiah calls the group of men that are in charge at that time, ruling Israel, right? Isaiah rips them to pieces, absolutely pieces. Okay, so it's not so much about being a Christian Zionist. It's about being a biblical Zionist and realizing that the nation of Israel that is there right now, and let me just go on the record because people get crazy. I don't believe in the Ashkenazi conspiracy or any of that other garbage. That's what I call it. I call it garbage. God knows where the 10 tribes are. God knows who the real Jews are. I had one of those before they went bankrupt. I had one of those 23andMe tests, right? I have Muslim blood, Arabic blood running through my Irish, French veins. So does God know who the 10 tribes are, the 12 tribes are? Does God know who the real Jews are? He absolutely does. And so many times I think where we get it wrong is we try to make the prophetic fit within the lens of now. And the whole point about prophecy is it's yet to come, right? If you read Dispensational Truth, you were talking about that just a couple minutes ago. Clarence Larkin, for all the great stuff that he wrote, and if I could have a cup of coffee with Larkin, I would just put a zipper on my mouth and I'd sprout 2 more ears and I'd say, what you know. But one of the things that Larkin couldn't see from his vantage point in 1918 and 1924, he couldn't see. He thought when Israel came back to the land, that would be it. And all the prophecies would trigger at that point. Now, he died about 18 or 19 years before Israel came back into the land. And we know, that was 80 years ago now. We know that the Jewish people being back in the land did not trigger the major prophecies. And it's more of a waiting period. So one of the things that I think Christians do wrongly is they try to look at the prophetic through the lens of the now. And if you do that, what do you see? You see the Jewish people flying the flag of Remphan. That's what it is. Okay. In
the star of Moloch. Yes. Yeah.
Right. In just a couple of days, right? Like that 6-pointed Jewish star, that's not a sign of the nation of Israel. That's Israel as Jacob. Okay. But in just a couple of days in the Dead Sea, they're going to have Pride City, the world's largest pride event ever taking place in the Middle East, right? Begging God to destroy them for the same thing that, so I
almost in the same location that he did it already.
right. Back at the scene of the crime, and then giving God the, whatever.
So here's let me jump in. Let me jump in on this because and Kevin, here's where I think I would agree with everything that you just said. I think that in Romans, Paul is telling us that to have a biblical position, there is going to be biblical tension. And he said that they are enemies of the gospel. I'm paraphrasing, but they are beloved for the Father's sake, not the Father, capital Father, but the small f, the fathers, the promises made, to the fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So you have those two things. You have a tension that has to be held. A, they are beloved. They are the chosen people, the earthly people of God, whereas we're the heavenly people according to Ephesians. But yet, at the same time, they are very wicked. Now, in my opinion, I think you can take that tension further. You also have the spiritual element of Israel, and then you have the geopolitical. Within the geopolitical, I think they're just as crooked as any other government. At the same time,
and maybe more so.
And I would even go more. I've said before, when you scratch the surface behind entertainment, banking, blah, 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 Epstein, you see a Jewish cabal there. At the same time, they have been, within the last 60 to 70 years, they have lived under a continual threat. Invaded in 1956, invaded in 1967, invaded in 1974, invaded in 1980. I mean, so they have lived under this tension over and over and over. So I get that. And that's where I think one of the problems that I see with listeners at the Soul Trap, and certainly you probably do as well, is everybody wants something that fits in a tweet or fits in a bumper sticker. But there is tension. And when they hear us say, hey, I support Israel, they go, oh, you're a Zionist. Yeah. No. If I say, hey, I don't support Israel here, they go, oh, you hate Israel. I think, no. it's not
radicalization.
That's radicalization. That's the issue.
Yeah, I had this conversation with somebody the other day, and I think we were doing evangelism. Maybe it's just a lowbrow way for me to even understand it. Maybe I'm not enough of a deep thinker, but I think the everlasting covenant is everlasting, and God will handle his business. Let God handle his business. And I think that when people advance the Ashkenazi Jew theory and all this anti-Israel stuff, you're just advancing anti-Semitism and you're hurting the cause. I think it's, you said you support what God supports, and then you let him handle his people. They will get what's coming to them regardless of whatever we do. But I think we can do more harm than good by being so anti-Semitic, so anti-Israel.
Yes, I think that's a good way to put it. And again, like you were saying, I think people look at one particular aspect, and that really bleeds into, in a sense, as we talk about the Iranian war, and we're slowly working our way up to Orange Man. But when you look at the Iranian war, I can look at this from multiple different avenues. On one hand, I can look and go, yeah, it's probably not a good thing for Iran to get a hold of a nuclear bomb. That's not a good thing. At the same time, I mean, we've been on this verge of this for like 25 years. So, there's nuance there. And I think that's one of the things that Bible believers, fundamentalists, and boy, I'm going to make some people mad here, but fundamentalists, they get radicalized. I believe to be a Bible believer, you are nuanced because the Bible is nuanced at times. And rightfully so. I think it was, Dr. Ruckman used to say that the Bible has landmines. It can confuse you if you don't know what's going on. And I think that's where we run into a problem. So there's a spirit in the air, brother. And you tell me if you think I'm wrong. I mean, there is a spirit to me that is deeper than just what we're seeing politically. There is a spirit of anti-hatred, anti-Jew, and at the same time, there was a rise in this pseudo-Christian nationalism. And man, that spirit to me is Catholic, Jesuit to be specific, and it just feels gnarly out there. What do you think? I know that's not a very accurate statement, but it feels Jesuity. It feels gnarly. It feels very venomous.
The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which hath been done, it is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. And when we look at the prophecies in the book of Daniel, and we see those 10 toes, and we see, you go to Revelation 17 and you go to Revelation 18, and you see the revived Roman Empire, you see the religious aspect with the Catholic Church in chapter 17, you see the kingdom king aspect of it in Revelation 18, and America is doing its very, very best to model itself after the things in both of those chapters. Now,
Yes.
Brother Dolmage thinks when he gave that presentation at Suncoast, which,
Yes.
just like the thing with Brother Aaron, we went into it with our skeptical hat on, and we came out saying, I'll buy that book.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, the part that I agree with Brother Dolmage about New York City being Babylon, in type, absolutely, there's no question about it. And America is, I mean, our government is founded on far too many elements from the actual Roman Empire for any Bible believer to relax in these last days. Now, I still think, and this is the part that I'm, from a classic dispensational perspective, that I'm sticking with. I believe that the revived Roman Empire is the revived Roman Empire. And when you look at what Pope Francis did, remember when he kissed that imam right on the mouth, and then he had his Declaration of Human Fraternity, and you blink your eyes, and that became the Abraham Accords, and you blink your eyes, and now the Middle East is radically and rapidly realigning itself. And I submit to you both that it is doing that in anticipation of the prophetic events which are unfolding. And that's how
I think a lot of times people, when they think of the revived Roman Empire, I think there's two things that in fact, I'm just reading it right now. I'm finishing up reading, and we're going to try to get him on, but there's some very interesting history between the Crusades and Islam. And when people think of the revived Roman Empire, they tend to think of Rome. But Rome's empire actually, obviously, the leadership expanded. At one point, Avignon in France is where the Pope had his seat of power. Germany was the central power seat, the landmass there. And I just pulled it up, and it doesn't take a rocket science to look, but Germany made the declaration here not long ago that they vowed to build Europe's strongest army. So I agree with you. Until I have been moved, I am more of a classical dispensationalist. I think that I think like Larkin and others didn't have the perspective in the sense of how to get, I don't think they knew how to get to there, but they knew where there was, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that you're seeing a massive rise of Islam immigration in Europe. You're seeing a huge counter-radicalization on the right in Europe that's saying we've had enough of this. Germany can rise to power. America is weakening. I think she's a very fragile country, more fragile than we think. And so, there's just some real interesting things that develop along the way here. And I agree with you. I think that it's one of those things where these discussions are important because whenever you're preaching or teaching, or when I'm doing something, we only have a certain amount. And I think what happens is people, if they're not hearing the whole thing, they're hearing clips, they're catching snippets, they're catching what they want. When in reality, what we're saying is that this thing is much deeper. And I'll say it like this: we talk about Iran, we talk about America, we talk about Trump, but what we're really talking about, or anti-Semitism, but what we're really talking about is the spirit behind. I am not a big fan. I am a Christian, and I would like to see a solidly, ethically Christian-based nation. In other words, I would much rather live in the 1950s than now. I mean, I just think that would be really good. But at the same time, Christian nationalism, it's a repackaged Jesuitism. And I know that people don't want to hear that. I'm not trying to impugn Doug Wilson's character or anybody else, but the reformers were not friends of Bible believers. The reformers made some good strides, but you certainly wouldn't want to live in Cotton Mather's day. I mean, there's just some real dangerous things afoot out there. And I think that people are getting caught up in the personalities of who we're talking about, and they miss the fact that we're actually talking about the spirit.
Sorry, folks. Something has gone terribly wrong. We'll get it fixed and be right back.
It is. Okay. So let's talk about, we've been talking around a little bit. Give me your take. Let's not worry. Like I said, we're talking about two different things. And I think that's where people get confused. I'm not talking about the geopolitical, if you took Christianity and rapture and all of that out. I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about from a spiritual feel. What is going on with Iran? What is happening in the Middle East? And how is America playing a role from a strictly spiritual standpoint?
Well, from a spiritual standpoint, it is obvious that America does not want to win this war, okay? It is not that we can't win this war, because we could have won it 3 Tuesdays ago if he hadn't have called off the B-52s and the B-2 bombers.
Okay.
And the other thing, from a spiritual perspective, that really makes me scratch my head is Benjamin Netanyahu has been prime minister for almost the entire time that Now the End Begins has been online. And the drum that he beat more than any other drum was Iran bad, nuclear weapons bad. They're weeks away. Now, he said this for 15 years. They're weeks away from a nuclear weapon, and we have to do everything that we can to stop that. Okay, flash forward to about 12 weeks ago, and Israel and America, in a joint attack, a blistering, beautiful joint attack, did exactly what you would expect them to do, and then it stopped and has not resumed. Nothing has changed. I mean, they've lost some people, but the regime is still in place. Okay. They are not decimated. They are not obliterated. And in a lot of respects, they seem to be calling at least some of the shots. Now, your question was a spiritual question. So I submit to you that all these discrepancies that we see happening in this, if you want to call it a war, things that should be happening that are not happening. Netanyahu gets his lifelong dream coming true. He gets to attack Iran, which is what he always talked about. And how did it work out? It's terrible. It's horrible. From a World War II perspective, this is garbage, what we're watching.
Yeah.
So, but I think that the reason for all these things is not so much incompetence or politics or any of those things, that the spiritual aspect, Iran is right there in the time of Jacob's trouble. They are right there in the Great Tribulation. You are not moving them off of the mark that God has set them on. It doesn't matter how big and powerful America is. You can with prophecy, you can only go so far, and then those invisible bumpers, like when you have a little kid bowling and they put the bumpers up in the gutters, and that kid can throw the ball any way he wants to throw the ball, and it's not going to go into the gutter because there's bumpers there. That's what we're watching right now.
Okay, so we talked about, and we talked about this just being a discussion. This is how we would do it if you and I were sitting here. So, the audience, you're watching this live time. Here's a thought, and maybe I'm just flipping the script a little.
Okay.
What if what we're seeing, and this is, oh my gosh, I know I'm gonna get crushed for this too. What if it is Satan that is behind, in the spirit of America and Israel, prompting this? And what if it is God on the other side, in the Persian side, putting those bumpers on that's saying, nope, you're not going to do this because I have plans that you don't know about. You're not going to give Israel absolute hegemony. You're not going to be able to do this. I'm going to limit what's going on. Because you're exactly right. Now let's just jump into the political fray. It makes zero sense what Donald Trump is doing from a political standpoint. It makes zero sense. If you're going to win the thing. I mean, bomb the crap out of them. But what are we doing? I mean, why? What are we doing? You've lost your support anyway. So go ahead and put boots on the ground. I mean, what are we doing? It sure seems like there's the Prince of Persia and the Prince of Greece. There's a lot of workings going on behind the scenes that we just don't seem privy to.
Right. Well, if you look at 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, it talks about the strong delusion that will take place after the rapture. And then you go over to Revelation chapter 6, and you see the first seal being opened and Antichrist is being released. And it's Jesus Christ who is releasing him. And then you go back to Jeremiah and you see that God raises up Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 27, and he tells Jeremiah, now you tell the people this is how it's going to be. They're going to watch the temple being burnt to the ground. They're going to watch people being killed and taken captive. And not only that, God says, I'll take it one step higher. Everybody who doesn't follow what Nebuchadnezzar tells them to do, I'm going to deal with those people and they'll be destroyed.
Yeah.
Right. So God has raised up Luke chapter 4, and the devil is tempting Jesus, and he says, all these kingdoms have been delivered unto me. And I believe that that's where we are right now. I believe that God has released, and I wrote an article 6 years ago, and this was not a popular stand, but I think a lot more people are coming around now. I said, hey, in my estimation, and I'll just give my opinion, I won't teach it as doctrine, but it sure looks to me like the beginning of sorrows has begun. Pestilence, earthquakes, wars, nations against nations, kingdom against kingdom, and all those other things. And here we are 6 years later, and we're talking about exactly the same thing, just on a higher level right now.
Well, we are, and we're talking about, I mean, you can see things that are typology. I think there's a biblical typology. I think there's a historical typology. And whether or not, I would agree with you. I think that that's where we are. And whether or not this is it, we're certainly getting an idea of what it would look like, as far as its development and what's going on. The thing that's just fascinating to me is that there's no, what can I say? There's no end game of clarity. Like, even though I didn't agree, even though like you didn't agree with going into Iraq, Afghanistan, it was kind of clear what they were trying to do, whether you believed them or not. Right. But this is like, hey, they can't have a nuclear weapon. Well, haven't we done that? I mean, I don't know. It's very odd. Have we done that? Have we not done that? What does that look like? How do we know? They're not even talking about having UN observers. Remember back in the old day when we used to send UN observers in to see if you had material? They're not even doing that. So it's very, very odd. And that's why, to me, the biggest thing that's coming out of this, and I know I keep circling back around to this, but it's fascinating, is the biggest thing I'm seeing is a resurgence of the hatred of Israel. Yeah. Right or wrong, up or down, in or out. And Christians by the scores are sitting there, and it's just like, man, you're going to end up on the wrong side of this thing. You're going to end up on the wrong side of this thing. And it's very problematic. Benjamin Netanyahu, all of those guys, we know what they are spiritually, we know what they are, but man, it is confusion. The other thing that's interesting is my personal opinion is, I actually think that Donald Trump, immoral as he is, I actually believe that in his mind that he is an America first. And I think, like, when he just made the recent statements, I don't worry about the economy, this, that. I think in his mind, it's the same hubris that was used when they walked into his office and said, if you don't shut this country down, 50% are going to die from the plague. Only you can save. And I think in his mind, it's the same thing. I don't care what anybody thinks. If I don't stop Iran, they're going to get a nuclear bomb. And it's almost as if they're using his own hubris against him. But I'm going to tell you something. That cat has gone off the rails. I mean, to me, the golden statue and stuff like that, I mean, that's low hanging fruit in the sense of, low hanging idolatry. I'm used to that. Whether you have a library named after you or a golden statue, but there is just this, and it's not, and here's why. I don't think that it's just Donald Trump. I think that whole thing, I'm going to drain the swamp and I'm going to do that. Sure you are. Yeah. Have you ever tried to drain the swamp? It doesn't work that easy. And what happens is, the more you drain the swamp, the more the swamp critters come out. Yeah. And I think he is surrounded by people. And I said this years ago, and I remember in the studio where I was, I honestly, I still do. I believe that Donald Trump will be a war president, not because I'm a great, have great insight, but all Republicans are. I mean, as far as you go back, Bush, the first Bush, even Reagan a little bit. I mean, Nixon. And so here we are. It's like rinse and repeat. So what do you think is happening? Where do we go? We know what Trump is now. The question is, we've got 2 years and then elections. What do you see happening from here on out? That's when I know we're in trouble, when you're at a loss for words.
Enough said.
Enough said.
I take a lot of heat online, and that really, it just bounces off me. It doesn't bother me at all. But I take a lot of heat online because I hold Donald Trump's feet to the fire the same way that I held Joe Biden's feet to the fire, the same way that I held Barack Obama's feet to the fire. And everybody gets judged from a Christian perspective, from a Bible believer perspective. Everybody gets judged by the same standard, and that's the scripture. Okay. Now, I wrote about when he got his second term 16 months ago. You go back to my website and read the positive and optimistic articles that I wrote. But then as soon as the wheels started to turn and it became obvious that the wheel was turning, I said, hey, wait a second, the wheel's turning. And then that's where all, you talk about at the start of this podcast, we were talking about, spiritual blindness and radicalization of thought. And for some reason, Trump has become the sacred cow that nobody can criticize, And
all right, so let me push back on you for a minute. Let me play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Could it be that it's not that it's just, well, and that's true for some people. I mean, that is, but could it be that it's not that he's a sacred cow that nothing can be touched, but it's that the feeling is that, yes, he does bad things, but we're not giving him enough credit for the good things that he is doing.
Right. But if you were to make a laundry list of all the amazing things that he promised, yes, he got rid of transgender swimmers. Okay, great. I don't think that was really negatively a significant segment of the population, but I'm glad he did that. But even in doing that, okay, and about a month ago, I wrote an article, maybe 2 months ago, talking about the absolute gayness of the government that he's created. So much so that when he goes to a rally, he does this very gay looking dance, all right? And he does it to what is loosely called the Gay National Anthem, which is YMCA by the Village People, right? Now, I wrote that article and people blasted me for he's just having fun and you're so uptight and I used to follow this website but I'm not coming anymore, right? I wrote an article and I did it on a podcast where I called it the Gay National Anthem and why does Trump do that? And then 4 weeks later he was in an interview on Fox News and he says, yeah, I don't know, I come out and I dance to the Gay National Anthem. I mean, go find that clip. Right? Yeah. So the problem is that we are watching Trump disavow the vast majority of the promises that he made, the $5,000 checks that were coming from Doge, the $2,000 checks that were coming from tariffs, which were just declared unconstitutional and illegal, right down to the fact where all these 600,000 people paid $100 a piece for a Trump mobile phone. And now on the Trump mobile phone website, there is new language saying the phone may never come and your $100 is not going to be refunded.
Yeah, one of the things that's happened, and Kevin, you can jump in on this. One of the things that has happened is I can go back to Rush Limbaugh, and Rush Limbaugh said it when he first started running that he is not a conservative. No, so from a strictly, let's take Christianity out of it. Donald Trump has never been an avowed conservative. He's a pragmatist. I believe he's a pragmatist that is patriotic. I'll give him that. I do believe that. I think to a fault he wants America first, but he's pragmatist. I also think he's the art of the deal maker. I think he's prideful in a lot of ways. And the problem that I think has happened with Christians is they were so starving for victory, they were so starving for that kind of thing, that there was this weird messianic investment placed in him. And where he's right, I'm going to say he's right. where he's questionable from a geopolitical standpoint, I'm going to go, well, that's questionable, but I get why he's doing that. I understand that. I might not agree with your decision, but I get that. You can't have, I don't think you can have an Iran that has a nuclear bomb. If you think they're controlling the Straits of Hormuz now, wait till they, I mean, you can't, I get that. I might disagree, but I get that. But we're beyond that. There are things that I don't get. And I think he is the figurehead, but I do not think that it's just him. I think it is a system behind him. He is the pinnacle, but there is a system, an underbelly that has been there. And that's the problem, is Christians are having a hard time because for some reason, it's hard to hold these two tensions. You're not going to make America great again, because if there was greatness in America, it was made because of the number of Christians and the base Christian ethic that was in the world. Listen, America ethically is no better today than she was 25 years ago. Period. It's worse. It's worse. So it's irrelevant to me whether you have a national day of prayer or whatever like that. The reality is that the spiritual rot and decay is going on, just like you see in the prophets in the Old Testament. And I think that's where Christians are having a hard time processing. They can't do it. I mean, Kevin, we've talked about this a lot.
I think it's a classic overpromise, under-deliver is what's happened. Like you talked about the checks, you talked about all these things. He has now those Trump accounts that are going to be for all the new children. You're going to have the Trump 401ks that's coming out next year. And it's just a lot of overpromising, under-delivering. And then whenever things start to heat up just a little bit, it's the Epstein files come out, and those kind of peter off. And then now it's the UFO files that come out. And to be honest, I don't see a whole lot of news coming out of the war in Iran. The majority of things I'm seeing online now, or all the top news stories right now, is the distraction of the UFO files.
Yes.
And something has to happen in order to swing these midterms back towards the Republicans. Because right now the vast majority of the people are hurting. You go out and do evangelism, we talk to people, they don't care really what's going on in Iran when they can't pay their bills. They don't care when they're hurting and they're sick and all these things are happening. They don't really care like that, because some of these things are really affecting people back home.
Yeah.
But then we just get fed a distraction, and then I believe something has to happen midsummer is what I'm thinking is going to happen. Whether it is going to be a drop of a financial stimulus, something or other, or something big is going to break in the Middle East, whatever. I think there's kind of holding on to something in order to make something move, to make the Republican Party look better, and one to attempt to redeem Donald Trump in the eyes of the Republicans and the Christians alike.
Yeah. But look, the buck stops with you. If everything rises and falls on leadership, Dr. Lee Robertson used to say. And at the end of the day, he's the one that's made all these promises. He's the one and it's so weird to me. I mean, I can see where people get weird with this, because it's like all of a sudden we're all in on Iran. I mean, and I'll take it a step further, and I'll turn it back to you. Even to me, before Iran, I didn't understand the whole Minneapolis, Minnesota stuff with ICE. Last I checked, I didn't think Minnesota was a big immigration issue. Why, if you're really going to shut things down, shut the border down. What are we messing around with ICE going through the streets with masks on? That's not the problem. That ship has sailed. If you're here, you're here. We'll deal with that later. Why don't we actually close the border down? It's all a show to me. It's a lot of pomp and circumstance and very little substance. What do you say, brother?
Oh, I say the whole thing is a show. And it is obvious from the fact that there's no results. And Brother Kevin said they start the war to distract you from the Epstein files, then they release the UFO files to distract you from the war that's going badly. And now he has just turned his back on the whole thing, and he's going to China. He's already in China. And if you were to grade him, okay, like a school teacher with a test score, he would be an F- right now. Okay.
I agree.
He would be an absolute F-, but it is that spiritual blindness that prevents people from seeing that. Okay.
So I think, so I'm going to push back on you just a little bit here. I would agree with some that it's spiritual blindness. I think some, and this might be maybe from just, well, it's irrelevant from where it's from. I think some of it is a spiritual fear. You know, fear can alter your perception.
Yeah.
And fear can alter what you're seeing. And I think that when Donald Trump came to the presidency, there was a distinct fear that this nation is lost. There was a realization of that, and that there was offered a moment of time to turn back the clock. That catchphrase, "Make America Great Again." I think everybody agreed with that, whether you're spiritual or not. Everybody, for the most part, was like, "Yeah, man. I mean, let's get back to cornbread and buttermilk." And I believe that there is a fear that says, well, if all our hopes are in his basket, and that basket has holes, to whom shall we go? And people get really panicky about that. And that's very problematic, because I don't think that it's sometimes a willful blindness. In some cases it is, as much as it is a fear. What do we do? Where do we go? I'm interested to see what happens in China with this whole situation. This is a big deal. Whatever the pomp and circumstance is, the fact that he's meeting in China, big deal, man. We're seeing some big things. The question is, what happens after Trump? That's the real question. Are we looking at Gavin Newsom? I mean, where exactly are we heading? Because I don't know that as it stands right now, the Republicans can survive the midterms. That is gone, I think.
Unless something big happens to swing it in their favor midsummer.
Right. At this point, if the midterms were held today, it would be a Democratic landslide. There's no question about it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But you asked the question, what happens after Donald Trump? But if you remember back in 2024, and I play these clips on our podcast on a fairly regular basis, you have Donald Trump and J.D. Vance scaring us by saying that if Kamala becomes president, we're going to have a horrible economy, we're going to have sky-high gas prices, and we're going to have war in the Middle East. All three of those things Donald Trump has given us since the beginning of this year. Okay? Yeah. So we think that Trump is somehow the last bulwark against this ongoing tide that is going to oversweep us. Well, that tide's going to oversweep us, Trump or not. And you can see that Trump is people will say to me, well, I didn't vote for a pastor, I voted for a president. It's like, yeah, but he's a pathological liar, which has nothing to do with his spiritual aspect. He promises things that he has no intention of delivering and doesn't even really try, okay? And the part that makes me mad is not just when he does those things, which you could put down to hubris or whatever it is, and that's certainly true, but when it's so overt that you can't help but think that they're just mocking us, right?
Yeah.
Like he'll make all these posts and he'll say, tomorrow a civilization is going to end and I'm going to hit that button and wipe them off the face of the earth. And then the next day, without any provocation from the people he just threatened, he said, well, now it's time for peace talks.
Yes.
Are you kidding? So is he the village idiot? I don't think so.
Well, it's weird too, because, some of it, I mean, I'll see him say certain things and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. I think that would be a good thing if you can make that happen. I like that. And then you'll hear him, then he'll say certain things like, and I know this is very low hanging fruit, but what he said about Rob Reiner's death was horrific, man. I mean, like there's nobody around him that goes, bro, we don't say that in public. That's, and so you're exactly right. And then the same thing about his posts. If you're in the midst of a war, I get it. You want to be out in front of everybody, but until you have a piece of paper signed, dotted, I wouldn't say anything. I say, hey, the war is going on until we get it straightened out, but yes, there is an inability on one hand. And then when he does do something good, you're like, well, I mean, I agree. You don't vote. Look, when I go to buy a car, I don't ask the salesman what church he goes to. I'm trying to buy a car. But if the guy lies to me and keeps selling me a lemon over and over, it's irrelevant. And at some point, I'm going to change. And I think that's been the hardest thing probably for people to get their mind around is I don't think he's the village idiot.
No, I don't either.
And I think he is a much more easy to manipulate. He doesn't need money. He doesn't need fame. But what he does want is power and legacy. That's what all wealthy people want. And I believe that power and legacy is a very, very toxic combination that is used in his life to get the people behind the scenes to move where they want him to move to accomplish what needs to be done. And at the end of the day, for Christians, we are living at the end. I mean, now the end began, but it isn't beginning anymore. We're there. What I think is important in this conversation, I know you got your own show coming up. I appreciate you taking time, but what I think is important coming out of this conversation is that people need to hear that there is a sense in which I think when people watch shows or listen to podcasts or whatever, they're listening to one train of thought, and they're not, for instance, Donald Trump is not the only I believe Islam is an existential threat. I think it is rolling over Europe, the likes of which we've never seen since the Ottoman Empire.
America too.
It's rolling over America. We got real problems with that. I mean, I could go on and on and on down the list. So one of the things that I think that is important to understand is that this is not us jumping up and down on one particular thing. Yes, it's nuanced. I support Israel. I don't like everything they do. I believe Israel is God's chosen people. They're wicked as hell. I don't believe in the Ashkenazi conspiracy. There probably is a Jewish banking cabal. I mean, but what people want is something that'll fit on a bumper sticker. Right. And I go all the way back to what I think Brother Samuel said is it's radicalization. And I believe that even good Christians have become radicalized by Fox News in a lot of ways, by Donald Trump, to where you're like, well, I know he shouldn't have said that. But no, that's wrong. At the same time, the other side is radicalized when he does come up with a good idea. And the ability to talk through these things and to work through these things biblically are so very important.
I agree. And one more thing, because the title of this podcast is Orange Man Bad.
That's our working title now. Yeah. I'm sure we're going to get a big hit with that. We'll get a big hit with that.
Yeah, with your orange microphone, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But one of the things that I'm going to be talking about in our podcast in just a half an hour is if you remember back when Biden became president. Now, I agree, and I think 100% that was the third term of Barack Obama. And nothing I have seen or read or watched has convinced me otherwise. That was Barack Obama's third term. And they used Biden's body the same way that you're talking about Trump being manipulated right here and right now. And one of the strongest ways that that Trump is not only being manipulated, but he's the manipulator. Do you remember what the rallying cry was for years? I mean, 2021, 22, 23, 24, the stolen election, stop the steal. Okay. Yesterday on his Truth social page, Donald Trump posted a video. Remember Sidney Powell? Okay. And we have a fire hose. We're going to release the Kraken, right? And we have a fire hose, just like Pam Bondi. The files are on my desk, right? We have a fire hose of information to prove the stolen election. You fast forward 18 months after that, and she, in front of a judge, is confessing that she tampered with elections and she paid a fine. She's still serving probation from the misdeeds that she performed, in the aftermath of Stop the Steal. Donald Trump posted a video of her talking about that yesterday on his Truth social page. And the way that that we're being lied to and we're being manipulated by Donald Trump is at this moment in time, he will never be more powerful than he is right now. He has most of the Senate. He has just about all of the Congress. He has the Department of Justice. He has the FBI. He has the CIA. He has at his disposal, he could in a very short period of time produce the proof that the election was stolen. If proof exists, Donald Trump is in a position where he could 100%, no questions asked, guaranteed 10 out of 10 times, he could say, you guys find me that stuff, I want it on my desk, and you show it to me, and it would be done.
So I'll say this to you. I'll say this to you. I agree in a technical, on paper, but I believe that there is a power, as Epperson wrote years ago, the unseen hand. I believe that there is a power behind. I believe there's a black pope behind what we see. Yeah. And I believe that there is a power behind. And if he said that, I believe that there is a power behind him that says, no, you're not going to see that, Mr. President. In other words, there is a limit to the degree that you can, because there is what is seen, and then there is the image of power, and there is the substance of power. And don't ever get those conflated. And when you do start to get those conflated, if you become too powerful, this power broker has a way of taking people out. I do believe this, and I'm going back full circle. I do believe Charlie Kirk was too powerful. I believe he was the future and was too powerful. I believe Donald Trump was becoming too powerful until Butler. I think Butler was a signal. And just my personal,
that warning shot to his right ear was done by the deep state, telling him to. And I've been saying that since a week after it happened. Okay. Yeah,
it's a power. Yeah, but now here's what I'm going to say. I think the same thing that you just said could be said of where are the Epstein. And I'm not talking about the stuff that there's people that use that stuff against Trump. I don't care about the politics of that. I'm talking about the real, where are the arrests, where are the indictments.
Does anybody care about the victims?
Right. Where is it? Right. Nothing is happening. And I'm going to tell you this, it could be him. Yes, I agree. He could. But I think what this goes to show is that there is a power behind, there's a substance of power behind the image of power. You're not going to drain the swamp. You're not going to do this. You can play all those games you want, say what you want. But when you get in power, what you said Kamala Harris was going to do, it's going to get done. It's irrelevant to me whether, and I'm talking about the power people, it's irrelevant to me whether it's Kamala or you. You're going to do what we're going to tell you. And Carol Quigley wrote that book in Tragedy and Hope. He basically said that the left and right paradigm is simply for us. It makes us feel like we can kick the bums out and new people come in, but the real power behind the scenes is moving. And when you start running into a problem is when you have the image of the power lining up with the substance of the power. That's what I think we're seeing right now. All right, let me ask you real quick. Here's what we got. We know you got to get ready for your show, and we appreciate that. Give me a rundown for the next 6 months, Kevin. Next 6 months, what do you think happens midterms and after next 6 months? Just kind of how do you feel this moves? I'll start with you, Brother Grider. What do you think next 6 months, midterms? We come into the we come into the end of the year. What's your feeling? What's your prognostication?
Well, I think that what we have seen in the first 5 months is what we're going to see in the next 5 months, just more of it, okay?
Yeah.
I believe that if something is not done to greatly change the paradigm, the Republicans will absolutely lose the midterms. There is no way that they could hold on to it. And I think that this phony war in the Middle East is just either just going to peter out or some bigger event will happen to make people forget about it. And I think Trump is just going to try to ride this thing for as long as he can. But he offers no hope. He offers no vision. He offers no plan for the future. He is not helping the economy. He's not helping the middle class American people. He is doing all the damage to the economy that he said, if you elect me, I will prevent this from happening. So status quo to the end. That's what I see.
Yeah. So that's my feeling in the sense of Iran, and I'm just going to park there for a minute. This is where to me my conspiracy and my geopolitical and spiritual all come in. If you believe that that's the case with Iran, why aren't we bombing them every day, 24/7?
Why don't we just finish the war? Yeah.
Why aren't we? If you're going to go to war and it's that vital and you want to break them, why don't we drop the B-52s? Why aren't we doing this? Why have we stopped? That doesn't make political sense. You're already there. Why don't we own that island? We've got enough special forces. Mm-hmm. I mean, like that. Why don't we have it? If you're going to do it, do it.
Yeah.
Something phony is right. Now, whatever he thinks.
The whole thing is phony. The whole thing is phony.
Yeah. I agree. I think we're moving towards something big. What do you think, Brother Kevin?
Oh, exactly. I agree 100%. I agree 100%. It's all just put on. It's all show. And unless something big happens to take our eyes off, it's just going to continue week after week. We're going to bomb them. Now it's a ceasefire. We're going to bomb them. Now it's a ceasefire. And it's just going to go on and on and on. And I think it's going to escalate until, like I always said, something midsummer, whatever it is going to happen. And we're setting up, probably for maybe for an Islamic attack. I don't know. We are going to celebrate 250 years. It's going to be very symbolic for them to try to hit us right when everybody's out celebrating and doing what they're going to do. I think that's going to make it a nice soft target.
Or you could have with the Abraham Accords, you could have with China, Russia, Ukraine, you could have this, hey, we got a global peace. Let's bring this thing together. Yeah. When everybody says peace and safety, then sudden destruction. I agree. I think the thing that is interesting, and I'll leave it like this, Trump, Iran, Islam, the whole thing, there are nuances to everything that's going on, but it is not any one particular, it's all moving that way. Somebody asked me the other day, what's the difference now versus 50 years ago? To me, the difference 50 years ago is if you had 10 markers for the second coming, you'd have like 3 or 4 at one time, and then they would fade off, and then you'd have 2 or 3 at the other time, and then they would fade off. Today, all 10 markers are all switched. They're all going. That's the difference to me. And I think that's what we're trying to get people to understand, whatever that may look like. We know you got to go to your show. Man, we got to come back again. The closer we get, let's talk through the summer. Maybe even do a special midterm, kind of a thing. Of course, tell us real quick before you go. Tell us about the big camp meeting that's coming up in September. Tell us real quick about that, just a little.
And just to let everybody know that the amount of people that we can handle at the camp meeting on that Saturday, it is not unlimited, and we are coming up on 90% capacity. Okay. We have had an excellent response to the camp meeting, and a lot of people want to come and be a part of it. So if you're thinking about coming to the camp meeting, you need to go to ntebcampmeeting.com right now and register, because once those spots are filled, we got to close it off, and we're at 90% right now. So
I love it. Yeah. Bookstore doing good.
Bookstore is doing very well. We continue to be a beacon of hope here in Palatka, and lots of Bibles are going out. And we had a great thing a couple of days ago. We had a mom who wrote her son is in the Williamson County Jail in Tennessee, and could we get him a Bible? And it took me about 3 weeks to break through the red tape to make a contact with the person at that facility. And not only is her son getting that Bible, but the entire jail is getting Bibles as well. Yeah. So from that perspective, from Bibles behind bars, we're doing fantastic.
Well, I think people can see that there may be differences in, maybe little things here or there, particulars, but what we're talking about is nuance, but it is absolutely powerful. We are right here at the end. We have to open up our eyes. We have to get back to the Bible. We have to understand that we are not going to brake check this. This world is moving on a train track that is set by the Lord, and our job is to reach as many people as we can, be as calm as we can in the meantime, because I believe the commodity of the future will be wisdom and discernment. And I think people are going to look for stability in more unstable times before the Lord comes. And, so it's not just that you and I and others sit here and make comments on what's bad. We actually have an offering of hope, and that hope is Christ. That hope is the Word of God. Hey, thanks so much. We'll get back with you real soon. Great show. Make sure to check out Now the End Begins, their bookstore, and get signed up for the camp meeting. Yours truly will be there. We're going to have a great time. We'll see you soon.